I thought that the debate last night had a big winner named Donald Trump. I thought that, in fact, the candidates were so busy bickering with each other that they forgot that they were there to fight for the American people and beat Mr. Trump.
Okay, so you think that too much bickering within each other. I mean, what did you think of Michael Bloomberg's debate debut?
I felt as if Michael Bloomberg was running in the wrong primary. I think it's really hard for a Democrat to justify stop and frisk, to justify support for redlining, and to justify a speech at the Republican convention in 2004 supporting the re-election of George W. Bush. I felt he was in a tough spot because it's very hard to come up with any kind of a plausible explanation for how that happened.
So no real surprise that the other candidates went after him a bit.
Well, I think that there's a real question here, though, about who is going to make the point that what we really need to do is pull together this party in our glorious diversity, and we need to beat Mr. Trump, and we need to beat Mr. Trump on the economy. He's always talking about how great he is on the economy, and he actually stinks in terms of delivering for the American people. And somebody's got to go out, and that's what I've been doing on the ground here, is telling people, look, yeah, we have low unemployment, but you can't live on the jobs that this economy produces, and all the growth is going to rich people. So it's really important for whoever wants to be the Democratic nominee to do what I've been doing, which is going to people and explaining why what we're going to do is so much better than what the Republicans are doing, and that we need to pull together as a party across all racial, ethnic, geographic, and philosophical lines and get together and show up at the polls in November and beat these guys.
Okay, well, you've never held political office before, so how will you be able to get things done in Washington?
Well, Michelle, as a Californian, you should know I've spent over 10 years pulling together coalitions of Americans, including specifically Californians, to take on what I think of as unchecked corporate interests. I mean, it started in California over 10 years ago on the No on 23 campaign, when I led a fight to stop two oil companies from repealing the most progressive energy laws in the world, which are our energy laws in California. And everybody said, nobody ever beats oil companies, and we got 70% of the vote. So in fact, I've spent a decade as an outsider getting things done in California and outside California. I closed $1 billion corporate tax loophole in California in 2012, Prop 39, and gave the money to the public schools. I have worked very successfully as an outsider, taking on these unchecked corporate interests. And my basic point about government is it's broken in D.C. It's broken. We need to take it back for the people. And if you're wondering who can do that, you have to ask yourself, is it going to be someone who's a career politician from inside the Beltway? Or is it going to be someone like me who, as an outsider, has been fighting corporate interests? Look, I'm the person who put together the need to impeach campaign. Nobody from inside the Beltway thought it was worth it to hold the most corrupt president in American history to account. They thought it was about politics. The American people know it's about right and wrong. And I was the person who pulled together 8.5 million people to say, let's stand up for what's right. That's why I can do things, because I'm not willing to take on the establishment as an outsider and represent and fight for the American people.
Well, you talked about the oil companies. We know climate change is a big issue for your campaign. What is your plan to deal with the crisis?
Well, Michelle, let me just say I'm the only person running for president who will say that climate is his or her number one priority. I've said I'd declare a state of emergency on day one and start to use the emergency power of the presidency to demand and order that corporations start to move to clean energy. I will do it from the standpoint of environmental justice, specifically the communities where it's unsafe to breathe without getting asthma or drink tap water without getting sick. And those tend to be black and brown communities. And you should know that within California, there has been amazing leadership from those communities in every environmental and climate fight. In fact, that's the people that I've partnered with for over a decade. And I just highlight one. There's a guy from Coachella Valley, Eddie Garcia, who's a legislator from the poorest zip code in California, who I think is one of the unsung heroes of the climate movement, who I've worked with, who I have deep respect for, and they're people like Eduardo across this country who I've worked with in climate, who are my real crew, because I do environmental justice, and we're going to create more than 4.5 million good-paying union jobs across this country as we rebuild it in a climate-smart way. Yeah, this is my number one thing, and I'm the only person who has a realistic plan to actually get it done.
Well, climate change is important here in California. So is PG&E, and we've been talking a lot about that, especially because of all of these wildfires. So my question to you is, do you support Bernie Sanders' call for a public takeover of PG&E?
Look, what I believe is holding corporations to account, breaking the corporate stranglehold on our government, having government set the rules. PG&E has failed in its duty to protect Californian citizens. I don't believe that Bernie Sanders can run a public utility, and I don't think that that's a good idea in the short, medium, or long term. Look, I'm someone who thinks unchecked capitalism has failed, and the answer is to take back this government and have it start writing the rules instead of letting the corporations write the rules for themselves. But the answer is not. I'm still someone who believes in a vibrant, competitive, innovative private sector, just with a strong government that insists that everything works for the American people, not the bottom line of corporations.
All right, Tom Steyer, thank you so much for talking with us this morning.